This is Grievances Filed. Andrew here, and it is Monday, February 10th, 2020, episode 26 here. Absolutely electric episode. We're going to get into the best professional football league that the nation has ever seen. We'll talk a little bit about the second best football league, professional football league in America, that is the NFL. We'll talk contracts, bargaining agreement, rules, rule changes, new penalties, old penalties. We'll talk with Julian Edelman, talk with Joe Spinosa, but first, a little snippet of the Edelman interview.
When thinking about the landscape of the National Football League vis-a-vis contract negotiations, ownership, players association, collecting bargain agreements, instant replays, penalties, new penalties, old penalties, taking all those factors into consideration, who's the best looking punt returner in the National Football League?
So we'll get that answer later on in the show from Edelman, who's definitely on. But we actually do have Joe Spinosa on, resident Viking expert, Kirk Cousins expert. But the XFL happened. And I think everyone loved it. And we'll get into that a little bit today. But here we go, episode 26. Let's rock it. Well, I don't think there was any mistake or misunderstanding about the XFL this past weekend. It was phenomenal. I'll have my thoughts for that. But it's another football league. And I was wrong 2 weeks ago about what I had said. I had said that there would be no more fast as 69 seconds until August. But I was wrong. We start in the nation's capital, where the Defenders had the first XFL game since starting back up. They also had a field goal for the first points in this league ever, a kick that PFT commentator would have also made. It was good from 34. He's good from 35. In the second quarter, a blocked punt springs the Defenders back into the lead. In the third, it was all DC, as Cardale Jones threw 2 touchdowns in the second half. And then a pick 6 was returned by the Defenders, and it locked in a win for the nation's capital. DC Defenders, 31. Seattle Dragons, 19. Next, we go to H-Town, where the Roughnecks, took on the LA Wildcats. The Wildcats could never get their head in the game and were absolutely dominated all night long, like Lionel Richie would say. PJ Walker was sharp for H-Town, tossing 4 touchdowns, and the Roughnecks went on to win by 20. Houston, 37. LA, 17. On the first Sunday without NFL football, there was football in New Jersey as the New Jersey Guardians took on the Tampa Bay Vipers. Although the Vipers were favored, it was all New Jersey and Matt McGloin. Aaron Murray, the former SEC stud, was anything but studly and looked absolutely atrocious. McGloin threw a touchdown as New Jersey went on to win in MetLife, something none of the NFL teams at MetLife could do. Guardians of the New Jersey Galaxy, 23, Tampa Bay, 3. We finish in Jerry's World. Not Jerry's World, the Texas Rangers ballpark. Let's say that. And it's where the Dallas Renegades took on the St. Louis Battlehawks. This was, in fact, the most boring game of them all over the weekend. But at least Cameron Artis-Payne threw a pass. It went 10 yards. One of the biggest plays of the day. Dallas, who was favored to win the whole entire league at odds of 5-2, only put up 9 points. Disappointing. Dallas, 9. St. Louis, 15. Wow. What a weekend for XFL football. What a weekend that was. As you could tell, I really enjoyed most of the games, honestly. It was a very exciting league, even from opening kickoff. The new kickoff rules, by the way, they have each team stand at I believe their own 35 and 30 yard line on their return, and the kicker's all by him lonesome. And it's like the kicker has probably 40 yards of space with 0 people around him, and it's just it's incredible sight to see. And I really liked it. I really liked the league. I liked how there's no extra points, and you could either go for 1, 2, or 3. And Jacob from Cleveland, discussed that they should add in a 5-point extra point. And the rules for the 5-point extra point would be you line up, you snap the ball from the 50, and if you get into the end zone, that's an extra 5 points. And that way, a lead of 11 is only a 1-possession game. A lead of 22, 1-possession game. That would be a game changer. So then the Houston Roughnecks versus the Los Angeles Wildcats, which ended 37-17, that's a 2-possession game in my new league, which has a 5-point extra point. But really exciting league. Kickoff, everyone tweeted about it, electric. It unbelievable. Let's start in the DC Defenders game. I know no one probably knows any of the players, but PFT commenter was trying out for the DC Defenders team for the position of kicker, under 35 yards though. The DC Defender kicker, by the way, he had made a 34-yard field goal, but then later missed on a 35-yarder. Everyone tweeted at PFT commenter. He just wrote, no comment. He would have made it. But then that same kicker made like a 55-yard field goal, something that PFT commenter couldn't have done, but still, I'd rather take perfection from inside 35 yards, and I know he would rather as well. That DC game, I think I've declared DC Defenders are my team. They're going to win it all. They look good. On offense, they have Cardale Jones leading the way. He looked pretty good. He made some good throws that looked like he was back at Ohio State and not in a Buffalo Bills uniform as he was for a cup of tea. He went 16 of 26, threw for 230, 2 touchdowns, no picks, pretty good rating. Quarterback on the other side, Silvers, really bad. I mean, just the Seattle Dragons, they had pretty cool uniforms. When I saw the game start, I'm like, am I sure I don't want to change to be a Seattle Dragons fan? They have pretty cool uniforms. The Defenders were kind of But standouts for the Defenders, Cardale Jones, very impressive. Eli Rogers, targeted 6 times, caught all 6 passes. He looked good, as if he did when he was in Pittsburgh. I don't know how he went from Pittsburgh to the XFL, and he it's not like he was that bad either in Pittsburgh. I thought he was very good, but I mean, good to see Cardale Jones looking good. This is such a platform for these guys to get jobs again in the NFL. I mean, it looks like if Cardale and Eli Rogers play like this, they'll definitely be back in the NFL. It looked really good. Those were some guys that probably most NFL fans would know. And then, very interesting game the whole time. It was fun seeing the extra points go. A lot of teams ended up trying to just go for one of the extra point, which is from the 2-yard line. And the commentators were saying, the coaches run like statistical analysis to see what's the most probable to get the most points. But I'd rather just take it from the 5-yard line and go for 2 every single time than go for 1 from the 2-yard line. It's kind of jam-packed in at the 2. I'd rather just throw it from the 5, try and get it in. That's at least my strategy. Commentators were good. Commentators were really good. I think they had Steve Levy commentate. They had Olsen on. The standout, obviously, was Pat McAfee. Pat McAfee was absolutely incredible. He commentated the last game, which was the most boring game of them all, the Dallas Renegades game. But moving along that same list, the next game on Saturday was Houston Roughnecks, which is an incredible, absolutely incredible name to have, Roughnecks, against the LA Wildcats. It was in Houston. I believe it was in Arlington. Nope, that was the Dallas game. Sorry, nope, it was in Houston. And they had a guy for quarterback for the Roughnecks, PJ Walker. Looked pretty good. Threw for 4 touchdowns. I didn't know who he was, but other than that, I mean, no No standouts, no name brands besides Sammy Coates caught 2 passes on the Roughnecks, another former Pittsburgh Steeler. LA Wildcats just didn't look good, nothing impressive, nothing much on that game. And then the New Jersey Guardians, who play in MetLife, so another MetLife team that classifies himself as New York, against Tampa Bay Vipers. Tampa Bay Vipers were horrible. Aaron Murray, who literally has every single SEC passing record, still, I believe, was horrible. He kept missing throws. He went 16 of 34, 2 picks, 45.1 passer rating. Bad. He looked bad, and I don't know. I was thinking about different players' falls from fame. Look at Cardale Jones, the Ohio State standout. At least he played well. Okay, you look at Eli Rogers, who was, if you're a Pittsburgh fan, you know Eli Rogers is actually pretty good. Fall, like, not a fall from fame, but fall from at least playing pretty well in the NFL. Aaron Murray, all the SEC records, sucks in the XFL. Sad, disappointing. Devion Smith, Michigan man, running back for the Tampa Bay Vipers, looked pretty good. He fumbled early, but he looked pretty good. He averaged 4.9 a carry. This Quentin Flowers guy character, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, punt returner, DB, linebacker, strong safety, free safety, coach, assistant coach. He looked good too. They had him all around, making plays at quarterback, making plays at running back. I think I don't believe that he played defense today, but they said he can. Interesting. Apparently he's an explosive player. Didn't look anything special to me. McGloin on the New Jersey Guardians, he looked good. He looked like a game manager, which is what he was. I think he had 7 starts in Oakland for the Raiders. Looked good. He did what he had to do, put up 23 points. All these XFL scores are going to be extremely weird. And there is an XFL sports predictor app that crashed about 5 times once they advertised it on commercial. And you pick some scores of the football games, and they'll give you $25,000 if you pick 2 of the scores correct, and I think $500,000 if you pick 3 of the scores correct. And I'm just like, okay, I'm going to pick the most random scores that I could think of, not like a football game where it's going to be 28-24, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I could see that. I'm like, no, it's going to be 22-15, or 26-16, 26-19, weird scores like that because of the extra point rules. And it's the XFL. No idea what goes on half the time. So that was the first Sunday game. The second Sunday game, as I mentioned before, was played in Arlington Ballpark. It was in Dallas. Dallas Renegades were favored to win the entire championship, 5-2 odds, I believe. And the DC Defenders were at 6-1 or something like that, tied with a couple other teams. Against the St. Louis Battlehawks, and just the Renegades were disappointing. Very, very disappointing. Okay, so they had Cameron Sutter-DePayne, who was a stud at Auburn. They only gave him 2 carries. They let him throw a pass, interestingly enough. And, it was just lackluster, but that was the most boring game. The only bright spot about that game was Pat McAfee, who was the sideline reporter. And by the way, I'll get into a little bit about the broadcasting about each game. It was incredible. It was really, really good. The broadcasters were much better. All the broadcasting crews were better than the Monday Night Football crew that we see on ESPN with Booger and Tess. Okay, those 2 are bad. When you have Pat McAfee on the sideline, talking to people, chatting it up, Jenny Taft from Undisputed, great job. They literally interview a player right after they run a slant and for a touchdown. They'll be like, oh, what'd you see on that? Or they'll interview a guy who effed up on what was a beautiful punt by Marquette King, who, by the way, is in the XFL now. And, by the way, there's a guy who completely blew his punt. The gunner ran down to try and down Marquette King's perfect ball at the 1-yard line. And Pat McAfee was on that game, and he flipped shit when the guy ended up